The morning sun rose over the polished facade of Buckingham Palace, casting a warm glow across the manicured grounds. To the rest of the world, it was a day of celebration for the House of Windsor. The press office had just released a polished official announcement bestowing a historic ceremonial title on young Prince George. The release spoke elegantly of continuity, tradition, and the bright, secure future of the monarchy. Across global media networks, royal commentators praised the move as a masterclass in institutional stability, celebrating the steady evolution of the royal line. Yet behind the gilded doors of Clarence House, far removed from the public spectacle, the reaction was anything but celebratory. Inside her private sitting room, Queen Camilla sat in total silence, staring at the printed announcement in her hands. She did not raise her voice. She did not hurl demands at the senior staff standing nervously near the doorway. Instead, as the reality of the words settled in, the composed exterior she had spent decades cultivating completely collapsed. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over as a profound, overwhelming grief took hold. What destroyed her in that moment was not just the bestowal of the historic title on Prince George, it was the brutal, unvarnished realization of how she had found out. There had been no private family discussion, no quiet heads-up over tea with King Charles. No courtesy phone call from the palace handlers she worked alongside every single day. She had read the news at the exact same moment as the rest of the world, reading cold ink on a piece of official parchment that delivered an unmistakable message. Her family was completely excluded from the future of the monarchy. For years, Camilla had harbored a quiet, deeply personal hope. While she understood that her children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, were classified by the Crown as private civilians, she had dreamed of a different reality for the next generation. Specifically, she had looked toward her grandson, Freddie Parker Bowles. Charming, well-mannered, and raised in close proximity to the royal sphere, Freddie represented her family's best chance at symbolic integration. In Camilla's mind, securing even a minor ceremonial honor or formal nod for Freddie would signify that her bloodline was acknowledged as part of the modern royal fabric. Over the past decade, she had carefully executed a subtle long game. It began with strategic invitations to private gatherings, ensuring her grandchildren were included in high-profile family photographs and seated near senior royals at landmark events. At private dinners and charitable receptions, she made a point of mentioning Freddie's accomplishments, quietly socializing the idea that her family could serve the institution in a supportive capacity. She never issued crude demands for peerages or grand royal titles. Instead, she subtly projected the idea that her descendants were deserving of formal royal respect. Behind closed doors, palace insiders revealed that Camilla had even explored the possibility of pressing for a minor hereditary barony or ceremonial distinction for Freddie once Charles ascended the throne. It was never about greed or grabbing headlines. For a woman who had spent decades being labeled as the ultimate outsider, securing a lasting place for her grandson was about belonging. Elevating Freddie was her way of rewriting a painful history, ensuring her legacy would not be erased once her time beside the king came to an end. Hi viewers, do you think Queen Camilla was right to want a royal title for her grandson Freddie, or should royal honors strictly belong to Prince George and direct bloodlines? Drop a quick yes or no in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to Royal Family Series for more raw palace updates. What Camilla failed to realize was that every subtle move she made was being carefully monitored by senior courtiers operating in the shadows of Kensington Palace. While King Charles often offered gentle, reassuring nods to appease his wife, the true custodians of the monarchy's future held a vastly different vision. A retired palace aide revealed that during a confidential strategy meeting, Prince William's top advisors raised serious concerns regarding Camilla's quiet campaign. They viewed the monarchy strictly as a bloodline institution rooted in lineage, direct descent, and historic legitimacy. Allowing step-relatives to cross the boundary into official royal territory was seen as a dangerous precedent that could dilute the integrity of the crown. Prince William caught wind of Camilla's private campaign for Freddie and quietly initiated a complete block, vowing behind closed doors that non-blood step-relatives would never enter the official royal registry. Prince William's operational strategy had been mapped out long before the historic title was officially conferred upon Prince George. Inside the administrative offices of Kensington Palace, William and Catherine had established a firm, unyielding philosophy regarding the governance of the royal brand. To the public eye, they presented a modern, accessible image of contemporary monarchy, but behind closed doors, their policy was governed by an uncompromising core principle: the absolute protection of the direct bloodline. For William, preserving the monarchy's authority required maintaining a clean, undivided line of succession. He saw the institution not as a broad, blended family tree, but as a tight, highly disciplined enterprise. Granting ceremonial titles, formal honors, or official standing to step-relatives was viewed as an unacceptable risk that could dilute public trust, create confusion over official duties, and invite accusations of court favoritism. Whenever Queen Camilla attempted to float subtle suggestions regarding formal roles or elevated recognition for her grandchildren, her efforts were met by William not with dramatic arguments, but with freezing, impenetrable silence. A former courtier noted that William never needed to raise his voice or enter open conflict during palace meetings. He simply allowed the stillness in the room to communicate his stance. He left no room for negotiation, letting her proposals wither without official response. William's vision drew heavily from the streamlined Scandinavian model of royalty: a reduced number of working royals, crystal-clear operational boundaries, and zero ceremonial honors awarded based on personal stepfamily connections. By keeping the institution tightly focused around the Mountbatten-Windsor lineage, he intended to shield the crown from public scrutiny and economic criticism. The decision to award Prince George his historic ceremonial title without providing prior notice to Clarence House was a calculated maneuver. William understood that if Camilla were given advance warning of the press release, she would inevitably attempt to lobby King Charles to intervene, alter the wording, or offer a secondary honor to her grandson, Freddie Parker Bowles, as an emotional compromise. By moving forward with the announcement silently and swiftly, William shut down any possibility of internal negotiation, locking the future of the monarchy firmly into place. Palace staff members overheard William privately stating to his inner circle that he felt zero obligation to cushion the blow, declaring that the crown survives on structural clarity, not personal sentiment. When the press release went live and the reality of the exclusion set in, the quiet tension that had been brewing inside the palace exploded behind closed doors. Inside the private quarters of Clarence House, Queen Camilla confronted King Charles in a raw, emotional showdown. Staff members working in adjacent corridors reported hearing the raised voices of the royal couple echoing through the residence. Camilla did not hold back her fury. She accused her husband of standing by idly while his own son systematically stripped her family of their dignity. She asked him how he could allow her grandson to be publicly overlooked and humiliated after everything she had sacrificed to support his reign and protect his standing. King Charles found himself utterly trapped between his devotion to his wife and his duty to his heir. He attempted to offer gentle explanations, citing centuries of royal protocol, historical precedent, and the necessity of maintaining institutional unity with William. But his defensive words only deepened the rift. Camilla cut across his excuses, telling him directly that he had failed to protect her when it mattered most, leaving her family completely defenseless against the cold mechanics of the palace machine. King Charles found himself caught in an agonizing position, trapped in the crossfire between the woman he had loved for decades and the son who held the ultimate key to the monarchy's future. For years, Charles had tried to play the role of peacemaker, offering Camilla gentle reassurances and whispering vague promises behind closed doors that they would find the right moment to elevate her family. He had even quietly floated the idea of granting a minor title or formal symbolic recognition to Freddie Parker Bowles as a gesture of goodwill. Prince William had completely shut down the proposal before it could even reach an official agenda. William saw any attempt to grant titles to step-grandchildren not as a harmless compromise, but as a dangerous precedent that would distort the public image of the crown for generations. Confronted with his heir's unyielding refusal, Charles did what he had spent his entire life trained to do. He chose the institution. He sacrificed his wife's private hopes to preserve the structural alignment of the royal succession. For Queen Camilla, that choice felt like a sharp, devastating betrayal. It was not just Prince William's icy coldness that cut deep. It was the realization that her own husband, the man for whom she had endured decades of public vilification, media scrutiny, and bitter rejection, had stepped aside and allowed her family to be discarded. Inside the quiet sanctuary of Clarence House, Camilla held the printed press release announcing Prince George's historic title. Tears of frustration and deep grief streamed down her face as she spoke to a handful of her most loyal aides. She looked at the paper and lamented that after everything she had sacrificed, after every storm she had weathered to serve the crown, her own bloodline was being completely erased from the family's legacy. When King Charles attempted to enter her sitting room to offer carefully rehearsed explanations about public expectation, royal strategy, and historical precedent, Camilla refused to hear it. She looked at him with cold detachment and told him plainly that he had stood by and let her family be humiliated in front of the world. The emotional toll of the crisis manifested immediately. Queen Camilla abruptly cancelled a series of high-profile official engagements, citing sudden health concerns. But inside the tight circle of palace staff, the truth was openly known. The Queen was not physically ill, she was emotionally shattered, retreating into a protective isolation while the tension between Clarence House and Kensington Palace reached an all-time high. King Charles, weighed down by guilt yet bound to his decision, did not press her to return to public view. He recognized the deep wound his choice had inflicted. As the quiet standoff deepened, the palace machinery moved with silent, bureaucratic efficiency to enforce the new reality. Administrative auditors and security details began quietly pulling back high-level background access passes previously granted to Camilla's extended family members. Under strict new directives issued from Prince William's office, step relatives were systematically removed from internal palace access lists, enforcing a clear and permanent barrier between the royal bloodline and the civilian branch of the family. The stark contrast between two divergent futures was now permanently set in stone across the royal landscape. On one side stood young Prince George, embarking on an elevated trajectory of sovereign duties, historic honors, and public celebration as the definitive heir to the throne. On the other side sat Freddie Parker Bowles and his siblings, cast firmly into the outer margins of the royal machine. They were young people growing up inside the grand halls of Windsor and Clarence House, allowed to share holiday meals and private smiles with the royal children, yet entirely barred from the registry, the protocol, and the history books. For Queen Camilla, the cold reality of that divide was a crushing blow to a lifetime of survival. She had endured the vilification of the press, decades of public disdain, and intense institutional resistance to earn her place beside the king. She had clawed her way to the crown, hoping that her long sacrifice might build a bridge for her own bloodline to receive symbolic dignity within the modern court. Instead, she was forced to confront a bitter, unyielding truth. She held the title of queen, but her family would forever remain civilians, erased from the crown's official legacy the moment her reign comes to an end. Retreating to the quiet solitude of her private estate at Mill House, Camilla wrapped herself in absolute silence. She did not release furious statements, she did not grant sensational interviews, but inside the corridors of Buckingham Palace, her silence was far more ominous than an open feud. Royal historians and seasoned palace observers quickly issued warnings about the long-term dangers of William's rigid policy. Raising step-grandchildren within the intimate fold of the royal household while publicly denying them status creates a deep, lingering undercurrent of family resentment. Feelings do not simply vanish because a press release enforces a boundary, and the seeds of a future generational rift have now been quietly planted. Prince William and Catherine have taken absolute control of the monarchy's future, building a streamlined, Windsor-centric fortress that prioritizes bloodline purity over blended family sentiment. They achieved the institutional clarity they sought, but it arrived at the cost of a permanently fractured household. Yet as the dust settles over the palace gates, whispers are already emerging about an undiscovered chapter in this war. Deep within the royal archives, catalogued during the recent transition of the monarch's estate, auditors uncovered a confidential private letter written by King Charles years prior. The document details a secret pledge regarding the future status of Camilla's grandchildren, a pledge that directly contradicts William's new mandate. What explosive promises were made inside that forgotten letter, and what will happen when Queen Camilla decides to use it to challenge Prince William's authority? The battle for the crown's legacy is far from over. Make sure to subscribe to Royal Family Series right now, hit that notification bell, and leave your thoughts in the comments below so you never miss a single update on our next dramatic release.